Hi, it's Chris, and this is my review of today's reading of Reading the Bible in a Year Chronologically. And today was July 1st, and actually is, so we read through 2Chronicles 29, 30, and part got into 31. So this is all about the reign of King Hezekiah, and we see the goodness that he did. He took over the kingdoms after took over the kingdom of Israel, yeah, because that's where the temple was at, and restored the order of worshiping God in the temple, and restored the temple back to its glory, and did well to seek the right of God, of the way things are supposed to be, the way that God commanded in the law of Moses. He worked towards that end. He even decided that they were late in getting started, and they didn't have enough people to do the work, and they got work late, and they decided to go forth and have the Passover festival that year anyway, even though they were a month late from it. And with that, a lot of people ended up being unclean, and so Hezekiah asked them to join in anyway, and he prayed for them. And God honored his prayer, because God is not about order, he's about heartbeat. What's the heartbeat behind it? They also celebrated all the festivals and things like that. They worshiped, they got together, and they broke bread together. And it doesn't say this, but what we know about the festivals is that in those times they would share the history of where they came from. They would go back to the stories that Moses would tell from Genesis and all the way through of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, which became Israel, and how they got started and how they prospered in Egypt, and then they were oppressed and then led out of Egypt, and then they wandered in the desert for 40 years, and then they became a nation, and given the promised land. They would share that. That would be what they would do. They would make sure their children, their children's children would learn these stories. So that was the time that they would have. So the sacrifices, they weren't just burnt to God, they were used to celebrate. They would burn some things to God, but they would take what was left, or they'd take the assigned portion, and they would eat it with the Levites and the priests and the people. They would eat together, they would celebrate together with that offered animal and bread and wine. They would celebrate. It was a great big party, and that's what it was all about. So Hezekiah brought that back, and this ends with Hezekiah sought his God wholeheartedly, and as a result, he was very successful. Not just successful, but very successful. Good wisdom right there. Seek the God with all your heart, and he will bring success. And that's our lesson that I think from all of it is seek God, rely on him, be faithful to him. You turn from him and his wrath comes, even to this day, even through the promise of Jesus. Still the same God.